Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the NBA Front Office Show. Keith, we are 1 week until the NBA trade deadline. Let's go. We've got a lot of news to talk about around the trade front, but man, a week, this is when, this is when I start to get really nervous to leave the house or anything like that. We're in that time of year right now, and I love it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, this is when go to bed, the sound stays on the phone, so I hear notifications. If I need to react to anything, let's hope not. The 2 a.m. trades, while they may be fun, I'd rather have them at a more decent hour. But yeah, I'm excited. Unfortunately, we got to start with a not great story today. With this Terry Rozier situation.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. Terry Rozier under investigation, potentially manipulating play. In other words, throwing games or throwing at least his own stats. Similar to the Jontay Porter situation. Yeah. The NBA said they already did their own investigation and didn't find anything, but they're cooperating with the full investigation here. Keith, we know what happened with Jontay Porter. This could wind up being a big deal for Terry Rozier and perhaps the Miami Heat as well if he's found of any wrongdoing here.
Yeah, and to be clear, it sounds like this was when he was maybe with the Hornets, but it came out of some of the stuff. There's a lot of different things out there, but some of the stuff with Jontay Porter, like you said, the NBA was like, hey, we didn't find any wrongdoing, but the federal investigation goes on, and the NBA is basically saying, yeah, we're cooperating with it. We're going to see. I've seen people posting a bunch of kind of weird lines and things like that. Who knows? Terry Rozier is a guy, he's been streaky to say the least in his career. So, it might have just been a bad game or two, but but who really knows, where that's going to go. And you're absolutely right. This could turn into, if this turns into a banning or anything like that, it's going to have a, definite impact. I'm very curious to see what the Heat do here with Rozier while this is ongoing. Does he continue to play? What does that look like? Jontay Porter was pretty much immediately put on some kind of leave. And then, out of the picture. And Jontay Porter was a two-way player on a not good Raptors team. Terry Rozier is a key rotation guy on the Heat. So we'll see, what happens with that. But it's, not a great story. Unfortunately, I don't think this is the last we're going to hear of these things in sports either.
Keith, I don't recall what happens on the cap front. I know we're very cap and it's cold, right? But we're very cap focused on the show. What would happen to Terry Rozier's contract for the Miami Heat in regards to their cap situation?
Yeah, it would depend on what the actual actions that are done. If it's a suspension, it just sits as is. They could always waive him. He has a very weird contract structure where all but just over $1 million of his contract is guaranteed for next year. So a very minor portion of it is non-guaranteed. So that could come into play. But there's no, as far as I know, with a banning, there's no hard set rule on this. If we go way back to when Reggie Lewis actually passed away with the Celtics, they did not get any cap relief. His cap number sat on the books. That has since been rectified, is the way I'll put that, from that to be those now. If a player passes, the contract is just wiped off the books. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure what would happen. I'll have to find out and do some digging here when we finish up.
Well, I'll tell you, I would assume the hope is for everybody involved that's not where this winds up. That's not where we want this to go. Yeah. All right. I won't hit the drop. I know we're a little pressed for time on today's show, but Jimmy Butler, the update on the Jimmy Butler trade front, the Warriors may be back in the mix. Although it's interesting, Keith, it seems like every time I hear a team is interested in going for Jimmy Butler, we also hear a counter report that, but they're also interested in doing this for this other guy, which tis the season. It's the time for plenty of smoke screens.
Yeah, without a doubt. And one of the Jimmy Butler pieces related to the Warriors were they're not so sure about bringing him in to their locker room. Now, they've done okay with guys in the past who've had issues, but it sounds like they're a little like, do we really want him and Draymond, or both can be volatile guys? We'll see what that looks like. But, it's and then there's a report of, but we're going to get into it a little later. They also like Zach LaVine. But the big Jimmy Butler update is the Heat have come way down on their asking price for him. They were really holding firm to we need players who can win now, but their contracts have to expire after 25, 26, because we're going to have these big cap space plans in 2026. It sounds like they've kind of come off that a little bit to be like, all right, if the money carries a little longer, which opens up a whole new world of possibilities, which sounds like why the Warriors are like, all right, now maybe we're willing to talk. Because we might be able to do something, because likely it would involve Andrew Wiggins contract coming off the books for the Warriors and headed to Miami or a third team or however they structure it. So the other piece is the Phoenix Suns, per Bobby Marks, are continuing to try to find someone to take on Bradley Beal's contract and somewhere that Bradley Beal's willing to go so that they can make a trade for Jimmy Butler. So this one doesn't seem like it's going to resolve anytime. Maybe I just jinxed it. Maybe it will happen, here in the next day or so. That would be really nice. But it sounds like, there are teams involved. I continue to think, I was asked this morning on 2 different radio programs, because everybody's asking about Jimmy Butler. And then the next guy we're going to talk about in a minute, everybody's like, what do you think? Does he actually get traded? He's going to get moved. Like, I am 100% certain he gets moved within the next week.
Which is why, for people who think it's going to be a dud of a deadline, no, we're getting like a Jimmy Butler trade. We've already had, what was it, 5 now? 5 trades that have happened so far. Yep. Let's go. Let's go.
We're going to see some stuff happen here. Like, and part of why it's taken a little bit is these are big, complicated trades. So they may take a little bit to come together.
Hold on to your butts. That's what it all comes down to for this year's trade deadline. That's going to be our theme. I'm going to have to make a drop. The De'Aaron Fox update. So De'Aaron Fox right now, of course, would like to move on from the Sacramento Kings. And the word is that maybe the San Antonio Spurs could be in the mix. But there's other clubs too, like potentially the Miami Heat could be a landing spot. The Houston Rockets could be a landing spot for him. But Keith, what's your say? Do you think this also gets done before the trade deadline, or do the Kings push this into the summer?
Yeah, my guess is this also gets done. I think the timing of this was very interesting in that it was let's put this out there with enough time that, again, this will be a little bit more of a complicated deal. So let's give time for it to get put together. This did not come out like next Tuesday where there's 48 hours to the deadline and, it's going to have to be really slammed together. I think this one is, all right, let's kind of make this work. Now, is it the Spurs? Are other teams like, all right, we'll kind of call his bluff a little bit, Donovan Mitchell style, and get him in here and see if he's happy. And then we'll move forward. That could be a thing too. But everything that's coming out, I mean, he said last night when asked, he was basically like, hey, kind of, it is what it is. With the trade stuff, I did say I do have a preferred place I'd like to be. He didn't name San Antonio. No one has directly named San Antonio. We all know it's San Antonio because the report's been out there, 100 times now. Yeah. And that would be my guess. I mean, the Spurs can get there without having to get too crazy. Spurs also have the ability, if it was like, hey, we really want you to take Kevin Huerter back too. That's one of the pieces of reporting is the Kings are like, if you're going to take on Fox, like, is the big guy, you got to take Huerter too. So we'll see. My guess is this also gets done, but I don't know. I'm not ruling out that some other team doesn't jump in there and say, you know what, let's make a run at it and see if we can make them happy here, and then we'll figure it out from there.
Right. And again, I believe, and this has been said not just by me, but by a lot of pundits around the NBA, top of the list, it's De'Aaron Fox. He's the top potential player on the trade market right now, unless there's some surprise out there that we don't know about, which would be wonderful. So much fun.
Like this guy.
Yeah,
maybe.
The Bucks may be interested in Zach LaVine. Now, Keith, this would also require the Bucks to drop below that second-tier apron so they could aggregate salaries in a trade. But I would assume, just like in any Jimmy Butler hypothetical trade to the Bucks, this would involve the Bucks dropping below the second-tier apron and executing something around a base of the salary of Chris Middleton and then other contracts going in.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking at here. It sounds like this is the 3 most common names mentioned in Bucks trades are Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis, and Pat Connaughton. Sounds like Milwaukee wants to do something big. They are no strangers to making big moves. They made the Damian Lillard move. They made the Drew Holiday trade a couple years ago. I think they would make another move, and I think the Bucks are probably looking at this and saying, our offense is not good enough with what we have with Lillard and Giannis. We need one more guy who can just create something with the ball in his hands and also be a shooting threat. Well, that would be Zach LaVine, right? He would very much fit that mold. LaVine's also a guy you can kind of build forward with Giannis and Dame. Now you're talking about when we flip into next year, as you've got on the YouTube side, you've got the Bucks cap sheet pulled up. Giannis and Dame both start their max extensions next year, $50 million, $54 million. Well, Zach LaVine's at almost $50 million next year too. So you're at the cap for those three guys. So you're going to be right back in the second apron territory. It's going to be, pretty messy putting it together. But if you feel like this is the right move, yeah, by all means, go get them. It seems like the Bulls are open at least. There was a report LaVine would prefer to stay in Chicago now, but I don't think that's changed anything on the Bulls front. It sounds like the Bulls are really, for a change, very open without ridiculous asking prices for just about everybody on their roster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they are looking to make a move here. I did mention that the teams that are interested in Jimmy Butler, we're hearing stuff about them having other interests as well. Here's one: the Warriors also have interest in Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine suddenly has a market. Who knew? And
shocking, right?
Nikola Vucevic, who could potentially be out there as well. So, how much of this do you think is the Warriors trying to tell the Miami Heat, oh, no, we're not putting Jonathan Kuminga in the deal, and if you want him in the deal, well, we've got other options that we're going to turn to? Or do you think they have legit interest in these guys over perhaps Jimmy Butler?
That's a great question. I think they probably do have more interest here. They do seem a little more conscious of, let's try to align this so that it is not go all in for the next 2 or 3 seasons and then we're going to rebuild. They really do seem focused on, let's go get guys who can kind of bridge their whole 2 timelines stuff. Is really that's gone, but let's try to stretch this out a little bit. We can upgrade the team now and go. It's funny, a couple people asked, like, could they get LaVine and Vooch? I mean, they could. That's you're talking about a pretty huge trade, and that's a lot of salary that has to go out. But I mean, they could get there. I get why LaVine is probably a little bit more interesting to them. And then Vooch, it seems like they're just kind of circling each other right now, and that's a much easier trade because he makes half the money. So that is, a lot less salary they have to put together to go get him. But I'm very curious to see what the Warriors look like, here on the back end of this trade deadline, because it does feel like they are now, all right, let's kind of try to get busy a little bit, do something to bolster this team and really put us in position to make a playoff run.
Yeah. And the Warriors did get a really nice win last night over the Thunder. They shot the hell out of the ball. And so I'm not saying that one win suddenly encourages them to go all in or anything like that. But I mean, there's something to give Steph enough to really make some kind of a run this year. There's no question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I have no problem with it. Like we've been saying for a few weeks now, just don't get stupid. Don't be every pick under the sun, plus Kuminga, plus Podziemski, and really go. I mean, if it's Podziemski and a first to go get one of these guys, plus the matching salary, all right, I'm not going to balk at that too much.
Right. All right. Myles Turner. The sentiment out there right now, we saw Dan Wicke from the LA Times talked about this. A few different people have talked about that. He's like, if you blew the Pacers away with an offer, maybe, but even then, you'd probably have to give them a center back because they're not in a spot like, I don't know, like say the Nets, where, okay, we can trade Cam Johnson and we don't care if we're getting another wing back because we're not trying to win. The Pacers are playing really good basketball right now. And not only do they have to factor in, if they move Myles Turner, that they need another center, but stylistically, if the center they get back isn't a three-point shooter, that would mean a drastic shift in the way they operate their offense right now. So it's difficult to pull Myles Turner off this team unless you could find the exact right situation, which means he's not really that available. I did think it was interesting. Mark Stein noted that the Pacers, in order to give Myles Turner his contract next year, may look to move one of their wings or something like that. When we just look at Myles Turner and say, well, the Pacers can't give him that as much money as he wants because of where their cap situation is going to be next year. Do they want to be a taxpayer? All of that. We can't forget that the only path to clearing salary is not clearing Myles Turner off their books. There's other ways to do that too, to keep Myles Turner and still have their their final balance sheet where they want it to be.
Yeah, it's also really important to know. Let's say they do re-sign Myles Turner around 30 million. Let's just
Yeah.
say that's what the first year salary is. They would be in a spot where they're probably going to be 10 million into the tax, but that you don't need to resolve that at the start of the season. They could be in a spot where it's like, all right, we know we can move Aaron Neesmith into someone's unused mid-level exception amount or into a trade exception, and now we're out of the tax, and then off we go. And that's the things that sometimes, because I'm there, like they're not going to go into the tax, I don't think. But this team's also playing really well. I think they had the best record in the NBA in January. If I read their own social media tweet right, and I apologize because I didn't fact check it. I just believed it. So I
Well,
don't
if
know
it was
why.
their media, I would assume
Yeah.
it's correct.
Yeah, I would assume it's correct too. Now, is it they were tied with two teams? I don't know,
Sure.
but whatever. But they're playing really
They've
well.
been good.
That's the point. Yeah, they've been really good. They're starting to really make their move in the East standings, at least up into the range of they're going to battle for home court advantage probably the rest of the way. So, yeah, you're not just like, well, got to move on from Myles Turner because a year from now we might pay the tax. Like, now, if it was we're moving Myles Turner and we're getting starting center X back in the trade somehow, well, then maybe they are a little more interested if that guy's under contract for 10, 12, 15 million or something. Then that might be all right, let's make that move happen. But as it stands right now, I think what this is I put it in the realm of probably other teams are putting this out there of, hey, I wonder if the Pacers might move Myles Turner because how are they going to pay him? And then that turns into what I call informed speculation versus, hardcore reporting. And I can say even conversations I've had and, backing Mark Stein and a couple others now and some of the Indiana media, they're like, we're not trading Myles Turner. And the one thing that was funny when I was talking with someone was like, yeah, this is year 10 of, are they going to trade Myles Turner? They're like, we're just used to it by now.
Right. I mean, they were on the verge of trading him a couple of years ago, but but he stayed there. And if he wants to stay there, probably best to just keep him there.
Yep.
The Hawks are rumored to be open to trading Bogdanovic and Clint Capella. Clint Capella, not a surprise. Bogdanovic maybe being connected as a target for the Suns with the use of Nurkic deal. Obviously, there'd be some draft capital going, I would imagine, from the Suns to the Hawks. Why would the Hawks want to move on from Bogey here?
I think the Hawks are probably looking at things that they are, free falling. And Jalen Johnson, I don't think we've talked about this yet, is out for the season now with this shoulder injury, torn labrum. So he's going to be gone for the rest of the year. I got to wonder if the Hawks are looking at it a little bit and saying, hey, let's clear up our cap sheet some if we can. Let's, get off Bogdanovic's money. If we can move Capella, if we can rebalance with guys who might be more helpful, they might help the rest of this year, but really be helpful next year and beyond. Let's go that direction. I don't think we're going to see a full-scale fire sale from the Hawks. Like Trae Young's not going to get traded. They're not going to go crazy with like, all right, DeAndre Hunter needs to go if we trade Bogdanovic. I don't think we're going to see all that happening, but I do think Atlanta's probably having conversation now of, all right, we've slipped in the standings. They are now down to 9th in the conference. They've lost 6 in a row. It's just, getting harder on them as the season goes along. So I really got to wonder if it's like, all right, let's see what we can get here, rebalance ourselves and move forward from there.
Yeah. And maybe that's what they decide to do here. Now, I wonder if they would want to absorb Yusuf Nurkic, who's under contract for next year. But I would imagine if Bogdanovic is out there on the market, it would not be just the Phoenix Suns that would have interest. There would be a number of teams because he's very much a player that could plug and play in a lot of different situations.
Yeah, big time. Pretty acquirable contract too. It's like 17 million. So that's, pretty easy for a team to get. Also, I would say this. I wonder if the Nurkic Bogdanovic comes after or as part of a deal that sends Capella somewhere. Also
makes
where
sense.
It's like, all right, Clint Capella is going to get traded somewhere. We need a backup 5 behind Onyeka Okongwu. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. They've now moved to Okongwu as the starter. So I think that's probably how this continues for Atlanta at this point. And this is just, it's time to start looking at something a little bit different with this Hawks roster.
All right, let's go here. The Raptors are rumored to be looking for a significant piece. There have been some connections with them, and perhaps Brandon Ingram as a player that could land with them. I think this is really, it's not obviously not about this season. It's about setting the Raptors up for the future, whether it's Brandon Ingram or not. How much of this is like this season they want to get this done versus how much of this is the Raptors are always looking for a significant piece? I've seen that sentiment out there quite a bit coming from Raptors media that, you know what, this is also kind of par for the course, that even if they have no realistic shot of getting superstar X or whatever that's on the market, they're always a team that's going to check in and see if there's a conversation to be had.
Yeah, a couple things I was wondering about is that, let's just say it was Brandon Ingram, just to, because he has been linked to them. If you go get Brandon Ingram and then Brandon Ingram is healthy, well, you get a real look. All right, what does he look like next to Scotty Barnes and whoever else is left here in Toronto after that trade? And then that gives you the idea of, all right, well, what do we need to go get this summer to really see what it looks like? They've also, they speaking of teams in the standings, they have won 5 straight.
Whoopsies.
Yeah. Raptors fans every night in my mentions are like, what are we doing? Why?
Right. 5 in a row.
Yeah, 5 in a row. They've kind of taken themselves out. They're not so far out that they can't turn around and lose 5 in a row and be right back, near the bottom. But they might be looking at it and being like, hey, if the Bulls sell off guys and Sixers can't get it together, Sixers have won 4 in a row, maybe we can jump up here. So we'll see. I think there's if you're the Raptors, you're just kind of, let's put this together in a way where we can do a little pre-agency, go get our guy now, because it's going to be hard to sign someone like that in the offseason. Let's get it done. We've got Bruce Brown's expiring deal. We got Chris Boucher's expiring deal. That's 30 plus million. Let's try to make something happen that we won't be able to make as easily come summertime, even if it looks like a little bit of a weird move today.
Gotta love pre-agency. Gotta love it. All right, everybody. Obviously, a shorter rapid fire show today. But Keith, you've got radio. I've got a sick kid to deal with. So we wanted to jump on here, though, and get in some of the latest news. So everybody, we appreciate you for joining. Please make sure you do subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll keep you up to date on all things going on around the NBA. And I think we're in store for a busy. I have a feeling, Keith, we're going to be working this weekend.
Yeah, I think there's a chance. And I'll just end it with, we've got 1 week, bring some trades to me. And that's it. That's as far as I'm going to bastardize that song.
On that, till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.